This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Fresh off of NBA All-Star Weekend. Burning the midnight oil. Heavy conversations about what took place. NBA All-Star games finally come to an end. And now the focus, after a few days of rest and relaxation, I suppose, for our tired gaming warriors out there in the NBA, and for us who've been covering the NBA so far this season, maybe we'll have a few days for us to kind of collect our breaths a little bit and focus our attention on the final stretch run that is required, for said teams. But can't overlook the idea that, NBA All-Star Weekend arrived. It happened in Indy. And as always, my man Shaw keeping his eye on the most important things that are going on during there. What's going on, my brother?
Good to be here as always, family. You know what it is. This year we didn't make it out to All-Star. Don't feel like I missed too much. It was too cold. You can keep all that snow and, those 30 degrees. So at the end of the day, though, the festivities from what I did see off the court, I think a lot of people had a really amazing time. A lot of great activations at All-Star Weekend, as they always are. So might make our return out there to San Francisco in the Bay next year.
Yeah, I think that's going to have to be checked off on the list. No disrespect to Indy, because ironically enough, I think part of the allure with trying to have it in Indy, I really think I was expecting the NBA to lean in a little bit more on the history, really put emphasis on how much the game of basketball is really cherished and beloved. I find it, kind of funny because they made it a point when they had Reggie Miller, and they had Larry Bird, and they had Oscar Robertson, come out on the main floor. And even though Reggie Miller took up the bulk load of the conversation, this to me could have really been an awesome teaching moment. And I feel like as much as Larry Bird by skin color does not identify with Black History Month, however, his impact in the game of basketball, and speaking about the history of basketball, I thought would have been a great opportunity for the NBA to kind of really lean in and give some moments where, there are individuals there who have really made significant contributions to the game, and where, Black history kind of aligns itself in there. So, I know we're going to talk about, some of the hits and some of the possible misses that definitely happened through the course of NBA All-Star Weekend. But let it not be, forgotten that, it's always great when you have the game of basketball in the middle of Black History Month, and all eyes are focused on, arguably one of the more popular sports that is spearheaded by Black athletes.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to give them a break per se, but there was a bunch of different programming on, I think, throughout the course of the weekend that kind of tapped into a little bit of the overall history of Indiana and its connection to basketball. I wouldn't say BHM so much specifically, other than by virtue of some of the athletes that might have been featured. And then I think, again, when we're not there physically in the presence, you don't get the full aura and sense of all the things that are happening. So we look at what's curated for television to some degree. And then obviously for the All-Star game itself, like there was 2 hours of pregame stuff going on. So yeah, maybe they could have done a little bit more, to kind of lean into that aspect. But I do think Indiana itself tried to really kind of lean into the overall history and its connection to basketball through various other activities that we weren't privy to by virtue of not being there physically in the presence. But there was some other things, I think, even on NBA TV, they had a conversation. It was more about basketball, obviously. But in Isaiah Thomas, Larry Bird, Reggie Miller, they had like an hour-long conversation. You do these things almost at every All-Star Weekend where they kind of bring back some semblance of history or, the legends, if you will, and have some semblance of conversation. They squash beefs and those types of things there. So I'll give the NBA, a little bit of a pass on some of that, just because, again, we didn't get to see everything maybe in person, but I definitely understand the aura of kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, look, it's not so much that I'm that I'm trying to, listen, there's way too many other things we can get on the NBA about not getting right with All-Star weekend. You know where I'd be going with this. So we'll get to that part of it. But I think what I'm just more so alluding to is these are just prime opportunities to allow the NBA to still stay ahead of the curve when it comes to these initiatives, and especially when it's aligned properly for you to just, you just got to do it. I don't disagree with where you're coming from because there were those opportunities there that was done by NBA TV. I'm sure from a regional level, there was a lot of emphasis and the focal point for the fans that were there. But what I was just more so alluding to was the prime time opportunity that could have been had with ESPN and TNT and TBS. I felt like there were just spots, not necessarily emphasis that could curtail that and really play into the idea that you're celebrating within a significant month a sport that illuminates and highlights where the majority of those athletes are black, that can speak to the history, young and old. Like that conversation you're talking about would have been a great conversation to be had with a combination of young athletes and older athletes. So that again, this is just me thinking about it in the context of the NBA is always supposed to be ahead of the curve on these things, and where the emphasis is about brand activation and things of that nature, there's also that opportunity where history could be your brand activation. And so that to me is what I was hoping a little bit more from, especially if you're going to bring it to a city like Indianapolis.
No, well, again, I'm not going to go back and forth on that at all because I think it's definitely something that the league needs to take a serious look at overall in general and the overall product that they produce, no matter what city they're actually in. And I think with All Star always falling in the middle of Black History Month and around Valentine's Day and all these other things that are going on, they've got to take a lot of things into consideration as they're trying to do, and promote their sport, but also make it about the athletes themselves as well too.
Absolutely. All right. So listen, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was your overall assessment of NBA All Star Weekend?
So I'll give it a solid, like 6, 7, and that sounds low. I'm not disappointed. I think I've come to know what to expect, and I'll get on a soapbox for half a second and I'll jump right back off. Listen, social media was a dumpster fire all weekend, and it's just everybody's complaining about what it is and kind of like what it isn't from the aspect of the overall product. This competition doesn't work. Why is this player doing this? This sucks. Blah 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 blah. And at this point, like I don't know what is to be expected. So I mean, for me, All Star is not really about the All Star Saturday anymore. It's not about the All Star game on Sunday anymore. It really is about being in there, the fellowship, the networking that kind of takes place, and everybody's kind of letting their hair down for kind of what's supposed to be a fun event. So to me, while I don't think it was a perfect product, I'm not dissatisfied. So a 6 or 7 is because I knew what to expect. So I wasn't expecting a whole lot. And that 6 or 7 is basically just it's I think that's what it is pretty much every year. Some people are saying it's the worst All-Star game or All-Star weekend ever. Hey man, it's whatever. So I'm just not on that same vibe that everybody else is. And that's not to say that you or anybody else, doesn't have any right to make it right. I'm just not in that lane currently. So what about you? Where would you give it overall?
Yeah, so I give it a 5. Um, I, that's neutral, right? For saying 1 to 10. Don't hate and don't particularly care for, NBA All Star Weekend. And I think part of my problem is I'm coming from a space of this is exactly what happens when you don't control the narrative or you don't initiate to take control of the narrative of how you want the NBA All Star Weekend to really be. Um, this is not about a popularity contest, and it's not really about appeasing. There was a time when the NBA set the standard, and we all fell in line to understanding why it was done the way it was done, and really, put put our emotions, what I'm saying, put more of our fandom a little bit to the side. But again, it's a business. There is a marketability factor, and of course, you can clearly see where the NBA succumbed to where a lot of their platform is predicated on, where their businesses happen to lean on a lot more, is what the NBA sphere happens to speak to when you're talking about the social media platforms and the way that the players engage and utilize those platforms and manipulate those platforms to be another voice and things of that nature. That being said, my issue has always been on really keeping your eye on the ball about what it is that you're driving your people to, like what it is that you want them to take away from the game of basketball and why you're even having this weekend to begin with. And what you're starting to see again, and I speak to this, Shaw, is a distancing, a disconnect in the understanding of what you want people to take away from All-Star Week. If you want this to be about the players having a good time, bringing their family, you want this to be about the stars, then do not put emphasis on the seriousness of the competitiveness during these courses of the weekend, because I just honestly don't see the genuine competitiveness. The only thing that was competitive that I found from this weekend, Shaw, was the 3-point competition between Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu, right? And that was because they spoke to the importance of them wanting to make this happen. And because they did that, I think people took it seriously that they wanted to compete and show both sides of the coin in the importance of what it is to be a shooter in the current modern day NBA, and what it's like as a female to finally say, when we say we want to challenge you, we don't need you to give us handicaps or mulligans or put us on. No, let's do it. Let's actually have this contest. And I feel like this would have been great had they done that, say, Friday night and did that as a lead up to the 3-point contest instead of doing that and then doing the 3-point contest. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a setup, there's a way that these things can be done. And again, I feel like the NBA misses the mark on them. In other words, they're muddling the message about what should be taken from this. And so it just kind of hurts the idea that you want to be supportive of these type of efforts, but then when you lay it out and you put it out there for the masses, it's almost like you're saying, well, we want you to tell us what you really feel like and what you see, when a lot of it could be controlled by the NBA.
Well, I think that's something that the league can continue to figure out better, especially when it comes to the integration of the W, right? And we saw some years ago, and I'm forgetting the name of the competition now, but basically they would pair up 2 stars, like a current guy, a legend, and then like a WNBA player. Say that again?
I think it was the skills competition. They teamed up WNBA, NBA, and a legend, I believe. Is that
Right.
speaking to? Yeah,
Yeah, but it was a different version of the skills competition, kind of not like the one we see now. I think it was
not
actually
the one-on-one. It was a trifecta. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think in that regard, if they, especially with the rising star that is the W right now, more integration of that I think would be great. And then I think vice versa, WNBA All-Star Weekend, have the NBA guys, appear at that as well too. But there's some controversy there because it's like, oh, do the guys that have come in overshadow their weekend if they're there? I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to get into all those politics and semantics, but I think the leagues can work better together in general. And that might be something that could be better suited, done at All-Star Weekend. The Friday night stuff, like, listen, we're not even mentioning that. I even put it in our rundown, like the celebrity game, like, what are we doing? The rising stars. I mean, it's all stuff more or less for fans to get access. And I think that's what we have to more or less understand. It's like, all right, cool. Now, if you're looking for competition on top of that, I think you're only going to get that in certain aspects of the weekend. And the 3-point shooting competition, and maybe to a lesser degree the skills competition, you can get some stuff in there. I think generally speaking, the league is, they can do a better job, I think, of integrating the W and the NBA together. I think the other side of that too is, when the WNBA is having its All-Star Weekend, can the men go over there too, or a few guys, participate in that other than just showing up and being on the sidelines? There is some conversation, is that an issue? Do the men overshadow and all of that? Again, I don't want to get into so much of that as opposed to just what is the best way to cross-pollinate and I think elevate the game of basketball, both male and female. The rest of it, though, like, we're not even going to talk about the celebrity game, right? We're not going to talk about, what's going on with the rising stars. All those things are fluff. It's just for a way for fans to get closer to the guys, and they're not going to be this actual competition I think that's taking place throughout the course of the weekend. And that's where I just kind of stood on it. Like, I understand what it is. It's this, let's get close to these guys event. But if you're looking for real life competition, this is just probably not the weekend where you're going to see that. It's about, Instagram taking pictures, celebrities being involved, influencers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, yeah, you get a hint of competition maybe through the three-point contest on Saturday. But everything else, man, it really is fluff. And that's just kind of where I'm at with it. So that's why I don't have the same disposition I think that a lot of people have when it comes to their disdain for the NBA All-Star Weekend that they've had really for the last 10 years or so.
Well, I think a lot of that vitriol, though, really stems from just the lack of genuineness that the NBA is not speaking to, right? Like, in other words, if this is going to be fun, then just be fun, right? But don't sell me on, is it really important that Damian Lillard becomes the MVP of the All-Star game? And we're going to speak to, the All-Star game itself and the score and the totals and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just like, there's a point where the game, the weekend, all of what it reflects evolves. And I think there comes a point when the NBA kind of has to stop and just basically be like, look, we want this to be about entertainment. So let's not this be about necessarily the idea of how competitive it is, because we want to give people the glory days of what it was, because we're not talking about the same set of people who are who are influencing those competitive skills during All-Star Weekend. It's just not the same thing, and that's the unfortunate part. I can let it go, but I can't let it go when you keep trying to sell me on the idea that you're really taking this seriously and you're really putting forth this kind of effort. And then this is what you give me over the course of the weekend. I would just rather you just be like, look, just get those guys, sit them on couches and have them play NBA 2K. And I can live with that a whole lot better than the idea that you're actually going to try and sell me on the seriousness that these guys are actually taking it upon themselves. Or, you know what you do? If you really are concerned about where the future of the NBA is, let's start opening up the platform to the guys that really deserve that opportunity. Because I'm sure that they will give you their 100%, especially if they're playing in places where they're not getting that level of recognition. They're not getting that kind of prime time. So, yeah, I want to see the hungry guys that want to compete and play. I don't have to see LeBron. He could be there. You could focus the camera on him. Let him coach up some of these young guys. But that's who my focus would rather be on than seeing us dance around the whole idea that, there's a level of seriousness and competitiveness that really is coming from this. When guys are shooting up left-handed shots, Jaylen Brown is dunking, with the left hand, trying to say, this is a Michael Jackson moment. Like, no, I don't care about that stuff. I really don't, unless the idea is you're just trying to entertain.
All right, well, let's get into the course of the weekend itself and some of the events that's obviously that we've hinted at here a little bit. Listen, we can just skip over Friday night, as I alluded to a little while ago. There's just not much to discuss there.
I had no intentions of speaking about Friday night.
Yeah, so shout out to Benedict Mathurin. He played great on Friday. Right,
but it was great to see Detlef Schrempf. I got to tell you, listen, man.
Powell and Jalen Rose. Again, there's a lot. There's some stuff there, right? But the crux of people's the cross that everyone is dying on here is really the Saturday night exhibitions, and then obviously the All-Star game itself too. So, Team Pacers wins the skills competition. Damian Lillard repeats as a three-point champion. Steph Curry beats Sabrina Ionescu, and then Mac McClung beats Jaylen Brown in the slam dunk contest. By far and away, the three-point contest itself with Dame and then the one with Steph and Sabrina took the cake for the best events for the course of the weekend in general. Now, I think there was a lot of like, hey, let's get the Pacers highlighted. Let's get Tyrese Halliburton winning some stuff. He even tried to win the MVP here, in the game itself too, which we'll talk about in a minute. But from the Saturday stuff, to me, yeah, it was a little bit overdone, but I enjoyed the three-point contest. I don't mind that they have a lot of gimmicks in it here now. The 3-point ball. In there, the starry ball, I guess, if you want to do the proper branding, we're talking about that. Then, obviously they integrated the full money ball rack. We can put that anywhere. They did that a couple of years ago as well, too. So I think overall it was nice. A lot of guys got 26 points, Cat, Trae Young, Dame, obviously, as well. It was just, again, I thought that was pretty well done overall in its entirety. But I really enjoyed the integration of Sabrina and Steph. I thought that was well done, other than the belt being a little bit cheesy, which there were a lot of jokes on that, a lot of jokes on even the quality of the belt. I think I saw somebody say they ordered that thing from Temu. And that made me laugh. That made me laugh. But overall, I think
Do you
Saturday
really
night
want to
was
be
it
the
was rough.
NBA? Do you really want to be the NBA and be the butt of these type of jokes? I,
I mean, no, you don't. You really don't. But again, we get what we get, and I think
I have a
when it got to that
I
point,
have a trophy shop that's up the street, bro. That could
yeah,
have
they make better belts. There's no doubt. Everyone was like, you couldn't have hollered at the
bowling
WWE,
league.
AEW, nothing, but
I'm in a
whatever.
bowling league, and we have better trophies than that
Yeah,
craziness.
yeah.
That
It looked like a toy belt. It looked like something like that they could have got out of Walmart. And listen, now I'm ragging on it too. But again, to me, it was funny because I was just like, it wasn't really about the hardware as much as it was about the showmanship that I think Steph
listen,
and Sabrina
listen,
displayed.
as much as Sabrina was like, ecstatic that you participated in that, and I'm sure she was she was quite content that she didn't have to put that thing on her, didn't have to put that on her shoulder, didn't have to go walking around. Do you know how often she was being interviewed from the time that
Yeah.
thing ended all the way up until the game tonight and stuff like that? Can you
Well,
imagine having to walking around with that belt? Okay.
listen. So I'll get serious for a quick minute. I think there was a lot of misses. I think in the overall commentary, and then I think while there was this sense that we really needed to highlight the platform itself. And I think Ernie even missed it. He didn't get a lot of stuff for it. I mean, everyone's killing Kenny Smith for what he was saying, and Sabrina should have shot, from the WNBA line and all that stuff like that too. And yeah, that was out of pocket, whatever. But I thought like Ernie wasn't even trying to be malicious, so maybe that's why people let it go or whatever. But he was just like the thing he says about, oh yeah, and they told you couldn't play and that you need to go play with dolls. And I was like, yo, like what, like we're just like kind of force feeding the narrative here a little bit. I mean, if you're watching this competition, she's a hooper, she can ball. She's been balling for a very long time. And to
Right.
just kind of feel like we need to always have to figure out this place, how to, I don't know, inspire, I guess, if you will, at every single aspect of getting a microphone in front of us. I don't know. I just found that to be maybe a little bit cheesy and a little bit off-putting. But that's not to say that Sabrina's not an inspiration, to young women and young men as well too. But I just think it was I don't know. I thought it was a little bit overdone in that aspect, and I didn't really enjoy that part of the competition.
Oh, I didn't care for it at all. I listen. If two great athletes say they want to get something going, growing up where we grew up, right? Whether it be New York, Florida, wherever, that spoke in and of itself. You don't need any manufactured journalism in order to give people an incentive to see greatness come together and finally compete. You get what I'm saying? Like the story is already there. The story is already being told. All you got to do is just give it a platform for it to speak to. And this is the day and age where everybody has to inject themselves to be a part of that story. And I'm not saying that that's what Ernie Johnson did. I'm not saying that's what Kenny Smith did. But I am saying that this is the culture by which sports entertainment tends to live in at times. And without it's reckless, I guess the way you can call it, they recklessly undermine the story being spoken by the people who truly are participating in it, and that's the bad part about it, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
part that sucks, and you try to tune it out, but unfortunately you can't. So
Yeah, and I think Sabrina handled herself, extremely
oh,
well throughout, you
absolutely.
know, but I just she probably didn't need to go through a lot of that stuff. And again, the social media was a minefield, I think, with comments and people making their interpretations misogynistic and others. It was just a lot going on. And it was a little, for me, I'm going to say the word that I really want to utilize. It's overutilized in our culture and society now, but it was a little toxic, to kind of be on there. Now it's just like everyone just kind of just all over the place. And even in the alt cast, and this is a Sunday night thing too, but I don't know, man. Listen, I'll probably get in trouble for it, but I think if you watch the alt cast, so not the Twitter broadcast, not the regular TNT, the one on True with Taylor Rooks, Draymond, and Charles, like he's making these kind of like comments towards the end. You can see he's trying to hold himself back, with some stuff that he's even trying to say about Taylor. And even that, I was just like, well, like, really, just call the game, just whatever. Everything else, like there was a lot of great and funny moments in there,
Yeah.
but it was just like always having to make some reference to, not always, but he made more than on more than one occasion to, how she looks or how he thought she looks or whatever the case be. And those types of things, it's just like it's stupid and it's silly. And while that TNT crew wins Emmys and they are a lot more popular and famous than we'll ever be, and I get all that too, but they don't always get it right. And I guess I don't know, they're lauded in a way sometimes, just like, yeah, but you didn't see that. Again, Kenny caught hell. Kenny caught hell for his comments, but to me, they all need to tighten some things up here a little bit too, and trying to, what I mean, I don't know, it's kind of like the old guard, if you will. And I feel like, and I'm an old guy, but I feel like it's kind of the old guard continuing to just kind of hammer some messages that don't probably necessarily need to be said.
Well, I mean, look, after a while, the messaging tends to get a little bit tiring,
Yeah.
and even within its simplicity, it tends to get a little bit tiring. Like at some point, you would expect that their voices no longer just sit in a booth with the same four guys. And I understand that the TNT has expanded, and we're getting off of track for our conversations with All Star
Yeah.
Week. But I do think, again, Shaw, this highlights the point about where the NBA has opportunities to rewrite the script, because right now the script is being written by outside factors that have, in many respects, and no disrespect, because we're all doing it, we're making money off of it in some way, shape, or form, popularity, whatever the case may be, and the NBA is just riding along with it, but they're not setting certain standards, meeting certain requirements, setting certain things, like dictating a certain path that we want to kind of make sure that we're staying on. It's almost like we're being guided by the voices of only the guys from TNT. We're only being guided by the people from Bleacher Report. We're not being necessarily guided by the people who are actually involved in the game of basketball, being elevated and televised and spoken to in a certain kind of way. And this is the danger that comes from it. Because now when you're wanting to genuinely write the script, you want to genuinely put your best foot forward, the message gets muddled. The message is misinformed. The message is now coming from people no longer playing the game, but yet suddenly think that they know everything about the game and everyone rides along with it. And that's not necessarily how this is supposed to work,
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, we're in a space where we like who we like, or perceivedly, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of groupthink, I think, when it comes down to who can get into this gatekeeping space that we all know is truly real. Um, and yeah, while Candace Parker was there and she had some moments where she got to be on the telecast, there should probably been more female representation kind of throughout. But can we get some new authentic voices kind of throughout? So that's where it's interesting, because now I'm kind of going into that overall mantra, not trying to complain, but more this really is a critique, right? And so if you're going to have all these social media influencers and different people kind of coming into the space, great, awesome, right? But I'm sure there's a lot of great broadcasters and journalists who are also looking for a shot. And I understand the TV rights and all those other things, like TNT has to get their shots off, ESPN has to get their shots off, but I would just like to see some great integration into some of those other voices as well too. And I will say this, I want to give TNT credit, because they did highlight a young man from UM, and I'm gonna mess it up, whatever. But they did highlight a young man who's basically getting a journalism scholarship, and he got a chance to kind of show himself throughout the course of the weekend. He made it on the big pregame show in terms of some of his interviews and things of that nature. But there are a lot of people working within the NBA space and the sports space in general. It'd be nice to kind of hear some of that too, but we missed that by virtue of not physically being there, because maybe they are getting highlighted and they're doing their own thing on their own platforms. But as you said earlier, to get on the big stage, if you will, to get on TNT and ESPN, we're only going to get kind of the curated content that they're used to giving us.
Yeah, absolutely. You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA as we get into our overview of NBA All-Star Weekend. One quick thing I just wanted to highlight, Shaw, and to the point what we were talking about, I'd be remiss, because I was texting this, to a couple of my boys up here on how, I'm just tired of the NBA slam dunk contest being the end all be all of the, All-Star night. It is no longer the most important, event that people are really coming to watch, except to see stars sitting there oohing and eyeing and, pulling up their phones and things of that nature. And, I just, again, this just really speaks to what is it that we're asking, like, what is it the NBA is asking us to embrace about these events, right? If we're embracing the quality of the three, the shot of the, the beauty and the art of the three, okay, when you've got guys like Damian Lillard and Steph Curry and those guys representing, and this is what they do, you have a moment where you fuse together one of the great shooters in the WNBA and one of the great shooters in NBA history together, and Steph Curry is still in the prime of his career, shooting it out between each other. Love that. That's great. Awesome. Run with that if you feel like that's what's necessary. But the slam dunk contest, like, and I said this, what are we telling people? Like, what does the dunk really mean at this particular moment in time? Is it just a bunch of guys just jumping up in the air and doing a whole bunch of stunts and, like, just doing all kinds of nonsense that you pretty much are going to put on America's Got Talent? That's not what I come to pay for. If I want to do that, then I'm going to go watch America's Got Talent. But if I want to see guys going up and dunking the basketball, if I want to see that, because it's a part of the art, it's like a part of what is making the game of basketball really great, the NBA really great. The NBA has to do a better job of laying that out, telling us why this matters still. Like, why does it mean
Well,
so?
I don't think I see that's where I think you're wrong, because I don't think they can, and they that's not a pillar that they've been willing to swallow. So your point is so well put in the aspect of it doesn't matter anymore. But it's like, but then when you take it away, the purists get mad. Well, how dare you? But then everybody for all weekend long bitches and bitches and bitches about it being there. And I think it's one of those things, like, either you move it out of the spotlight spot altogether, right? It's not the feature event on Saturday night, or you cancel it, or maybe you bring it back every fifth year. You know what I mean? And so that way, maybe there's not just some flair about it, but maybe there could be some level of interest. But we're at the point now, there's just not enough dunks that people can do. The people competing, and this is no disrespect, shouts to Jaylen Brown for at least trying to bring some star quality to it. But Jaylen himself is not somebody who a lot of people identify with in terms of even being an NBA star, all-star or not, right? So to me, that's where the NBA needs to make a hard decision and say, listen, hey, we're done with this in its current format, one or the other. Take it out of the feature spot on Saturday night, or take it out altogether. And then I think you have, you can try to replace it with some other, quirky event if you want to. But the game really is about shooting now. And dunks, more or less, things that people get excited about are people dunking on other people. And you're not going to do that.
Right. I understand that. But again, to the point, Shaw, that is what I'm saying, is the NBA reading the temperature in the room and recognizing it's almost like they're afraid to transition off of something that no longer fits the narrative of what the NBA's culture and game is. And remember, they're responsible for that because they chose to go down this path. It's not to say, like, listen, for something that you're putting more into means something is going to come out. Something eventually is going to have to be removed from the equation. And that could very much be a hard pill to swallow. 3-on-3 basketball is a much more viable product to put out there right now than it is about guys getting up and dunking the basketball. You get what I'm saying? So there just comes a point, unless the NBA figures out a way in order to make it fun. Look, they had one of the Toppin brothers. You could have easily had the Toppin brothers go against each other, and you didn't even need anybody else. Mac McClung, fine. You won't, whatever. But he's a representation of the G League. Fine. They had a guy like this the night before. I forget who it was. He wound up winning the G League AT&T dunk contest. Fine. Put those two guys together. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to see four guys dunking, especially if people are not wanting them to be a part of the competition. You know what I'm saying? And then the judges, how many of them were actually dunkers? How many of them, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love my man, Mitch Richmond. He's one of my favorite players to follow. Boyd Anderson alum. And I spoke about this. Why is he judging this? He does not need to be judging the slam dunk contest. That was not.
Hey, you're in town, give you something to do. Right? it's a positive.
And that's why you should be their spokesperson, bro. Because you can lay out all of the genuine excuses that would have talked me off of the ledge. But at that moment in time, I'm sitting there saying, and you're wondering why people are giving you the vitriol that they're giving you. So again, like,
yeah.
So it is what it is. But I'm hoping that, like you said, the NBA will take notes and we'll see what comes of what they're going to try to do for 2025, right? I will say this though. Hopefully they will bring all of the visualization that they put a lot of emphasis
Yeah,
on.
I thought the court was dope.
I thought it was pretty cool that they did all of that. So
Yeah,
you'll work with that.
yeah. Well said. Well said.
You're tuned to the Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we're going to talk about an important milestone that was achieved in the NBA. Our man LeBron James doing something that few people have been able to do. And the question is, can it ever be done again once he walks away from the game? So you'll find out what we're talking about in a little bit. But before we do that, did you know that there's a whole collection of black-led products that fit into your daily routine and lifestyle that you can get at Walmart? And it's so important that we show Black founders some love, not just during Black History Month, but all year long. Because every time we buy a Black-led brand, we're making room or creating demand for another Black-led brand. Black founders and the products they bring to the table are creating a whole new world of choices at Walmart. Some of the products I want to check out are Natural Vert Granola, Zach and Zoe Honey, Scotch Porter Beard Balm, and Partake Cookies. Go to walmart.com/black and unlimited to discover all the amazing Black-owned products that you can add to your daily routine. More Baseline, Callie Warren Shaw. Don't go away. We are back, Callie Warren Shaw, the Baseline NBA podcast, and we're doing our NBA All-Star overview or post-game discussion, post-All-Star weekend discussion, however we want to put that one. So LeBron James, add another notch to, his legacy, 20th All-Star, basically passing, I believe it's
Kareem.
Yeah, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for most All-Star appearances. And listen, he probably still has another one or two in him, I would probably say.
For as long as he plays, he'll be an All-Star.
As long as he plays. Or, or if somehow the rules suddenly change. But we won't go there on that. But what does it mean for LeBron James, to achieve this, milestone? And I think you posted the question that I think is a very interesting one, in that, do we think that anybody is in range to possibly surpass LeBron James's achievement? Or is he going to be the last, of the Mohicans?
Yeah, and when we say last, I mean the last of our proverbial lifetime, because after we're out of here, we'll have no idea what's happening in the league. But I think, as we're watching it currently and understanding, the current landscape, I think we're hard pressed, because as you alluded to, he's at 20 now, and he'll get one for each more year he plays. So even if that's 2 or 3 more seasons, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, will we have another 20-time All-Star? Like, that number seems so daunting. It's one thing to be a 20-time All-Star. It's another thing to even play 20 years. So I don't know that we're going to see so many players who will play 20 years in this league. Currently under Kevin Durant is a 15-time All-Star. Or sorry, a 14-time All-Star. So do you think KD has 6 more years in him? 6 more years to even to get to 20? I don't think so. And then when you take even some of the younger generation, like Luka. So Luka's a 5-time All-Star. You think Luka's going to play till he's 40 years old? And I think even with his game style, I think that's kind of pushing it. He'll get into the double digits, 13, 14. Curry is already 35. Durant's 35 too. Forgot to mention that. Curry's 35 and has 10? Curry's not playing 10 more years, bro, and not making 10 more All-Stars in 10 more years. So to me, it seems like it really kind of goes to show what LeBron has been able to do. And I don't know that we're going to see another player of, not necessarily just of his ilk and overall greatness. And I know everyone's saying the game itself is in great hands, and I don't disagree with that. But there's not another LeBron in terms of the overall magnitude, the overall skill set, and I think the overall fandom, good, bad, or indifferent, whether you love him or hate him, there's nobody who's inspiring that level of emotion like LeBron is in today's game. And I don't think there's anybody even on the horizon coming up right now.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. I'm gonna throw something into what you were talking about that leads me to that point. So, in other words, we're agreeing on the same point, but my logic as to how we arrived at that, I think, is a little bit
Different
different.
methodology. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I look at it like this: until the NBA goes back to the rules where they'll allow high school athletes to come and enter back into the NBA, you're not going to see this. Um, the uniqueness about this situation when it comes to LeBron James is from the very beginning, LeBron James has always put emphasis on the greatness of his ability to play the game of basketball, and he invested in that. And the reason why I don't foresee anyone really getting as close to LeBron, at least within our generation, is because the climate and the conversation about what the NBA means to some of these players is totally different, right? And you can say LeBron James helped that and also hurt that, because
Yeah.
now a lot of these players have their hands in so many different pots, so many different initiatives. And listen, sometimes that means that they have to put their energies in different places, which means that it takes away from the same dedication that they give to the game. It would be completely different if a lot of these guys, are really, really hungry. But if you really think about it, Kevin Durant has already supplanted his level of greatness. He will always be in the conversation among one of the greatest players to play the game of basketball, but he'll never be the greatest, right? He's already kind of etched out a little bit of where he's has to go to be able to do that. So no matter what he does, it's really going to come down to, do you love the game enough that you want to continue to keep playing it the way that you're playing it, how you're playing it, right? I don't see that with Katie. With Steph Curry, to your point, the uniqueness of his game is so far out there that it's like, does he have the legs to continue to keep doing what he's doing? So a lot of the momentum in them still being given all-star considerations is all been predicated for everything that they've done leading up to this point. Whereas with your LeBron James, that level of greatness, I think, has always been etched in. Does he really love the game of basketball this much? Well, he was one of the pioneers to this, to have us ask that question, because of the amount of money he's made and the way that he's changed the NBA culture, the way he's moved the ball forward. But I think, had he not been in the crosshairs of Kobe Bryant, been in the crosshairs of a lot of great players, like he was one of the few that crossed that Rubicon, so to speak, to have access to that level of competitiveness. Now he sits atop of it. And because he's so far ahead of it, I just don't see, the only other people who I really think have that opportunity to probably do it is like Anthony Edwards. You know what I'm saying? But even then, that's, again, where will the NBA be in another 10 years to what we see from what Anthony Edwards does? So I think the only way that this great experiment works again is if the NBA rescinds that thought process that a player has to be, 2 years or has to hit a certain age to
Yeah,
be
19.
to be able to enter the NBA. I think we got to see another 17-year-old come back into the fray and essentially mimic or ascend a lot faster and a lot higher to what LeBron is doing, for us to have that conversation about what he's just done.
Yeah, but I think a lot of what he's done is because of his overall popularity, and then he's actually good, right? So your point about the years is so poignant, because you force somebody to have to come in at 19. Now they got to play till they're 39, and they have to get it in on their first go. I think even with LeBron, I don't believe he got it his first year, right? And then every year basically since then he's been an all-star. You can fact check me on that, so to speak. But again, coming in at 17 has made a lot of the difference in that too. So you're looking at somebody even having a 20-year career, let alone 20 all-stars.
Right.
It just seems so far gone, especially with the way we are in terms of this now. Be like, I will be the old curmudgeon. These guys, listen, the money is so much more than it was even from when LeBron came into the league. You don't have to play 20 years to kind of get the proverbial bag to really set you up for life. Now, Jaylen Brown's making what, $60 million a year? Why would he play till he's 40 years old, to 42? Why would anybody do that when you're going to just stack enough money? And now there's so many other ways you can make money and reinvest that money. So you definitely can work smarter, if you will, and make your money work for you. You don't have to use the basketball court as your sole source of income. And that's another reason why I don't think we're going to see 20-year careers, let alone 20-time All-Stars like LeBron. This really is, as you put it so eloquently, I think the last of the Mohicans here. Even with some of the guys who are on LeBron's heels, if you will, and KD most recent, because he has the most amount, right? He's going to have 14 All-Star appearances. KD might play till he's 40. He might. I mean, there's a slim possibility he does that. And then he'd be right up there probably with Kareem and right under the 20 of LeBron. But again, LeBron's going to be at 22 or 23 before all is said and done. Kevin Durant don't got 8 more years left in him.
He doesn't, but I think again, a lot of that also comes down to the style of player that we're talking about. Like
Sure.
LeBron James' impact in the NBA right now is that he's a leader, right? Kevin Durant has leadership qualities, right? Which a lot of it is spoken through the way he plays his game. So if his game doesn't translate and he's not available, is he really going to be there? Is he really trying to be there for like these other guys to come up? And that's what I mean. Like maybe with Steph Curry, I see that a lot more than I do see that with KD. But I don't see that with too many other guys, except if you go as far back. Because like even if you want to, let's say for example, you want to consider Jaylen Brown, he's already missed a few years, right? Like when
he's 3 times now. Yeah.
So again, like it's gonna come down to the younger, hot out the gate, kind of like Patrick Mahomes, fast start legacy stuff. Where you're already in that kind of conversation, and where you fit in the hierarchy of that level of greatness that you're showing year in, year out in order to build up the momentum for that talk to be had. Because I to your point, y'all, like you just spent a few moments really speaking to the business of what a lot of these players are talking about regarding the NBA. And a lot of it doesn't necessarily translate to what they're expected to do on that basketball court. Like it's interesting. Over the weekend, we were hearing how guys are really getting tired of the conversation. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Damian Lillard. He's saying he's really getting tired of the conversation about, I got to have rings attached in order to show that I have had a great career. And I hear him. I understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, remember, a lot of those guys that are talking about that were guys that spent a lot of years before they found an opportunity to play in the NBA finals. So, they're sitting there saying, damn, I wish I had your skills. It's like, because my passion to want to win a championship, it's like, you're kind of like, oh, well, if I don't win, whatever. And it's like, I don't understand how you can have that mentality and still be playing in the NBA. And I think that's where a lot of that, that side eye is coming from a lot of the criticism when guys are just saying, yeah, I'm not really worried about that. And that's not going to define my career. It's not something that you should be speaking loudly about anyway, because the idea is that you'll play as long as it takes to get you to that point where you're playing for an NBA championship, and rings should matter in the grand scheme of things. This is why most guys wound up staying in the NBA a lot longer than necessary.
Yeah, no, I think really great points. And, I think as you're talking, you're trying to think about, Tyrese Halliburton, kind of one of the princes of the All-Star weekend, 2 All-Stars in 4 years that he's been in the league, but he's already 23. Right. So you got to think of, already 23. Right. Anthony Edwards, same thing. 2 All-Stars in 3 years or 4 years as well. He's 22. So but there's just not going to be the need. They're already making more money than LeBron made when he was 22 or 23, even 4 or 5 times the amount that he was making at that point. So like I said, there's the need and want to be in the league for 20 years. It's just not going to be there. And there's some guys who really do love hooping. And we were talking to Ryan Hollins, right, a couple of weeks ago. He's like, yeah, Tyrese Halliburton, man, he's going to be playing until he's whatever. And maybe that's true. Doesn't mean he's going to be an all-star until he's whatever. And I think that's what we need to kind of discern here. It's not just, hey, well, even if Halliburton has a 20-year career, to think he'll be a 20-time all-star, I think that's probably, a little bit out of the overall scope long term. So all of this to give LeBron his proverbial flowers, and not that he needs our pats on the back or that boys or whatever the case may be, but this is truly remarkable. I got to throw a dig in here though. I'm sure you caught his statement about he didn't know if he was going to do a farewell tour. He doesn't know how much longer he's going to play, or if he will do a farewell tour, or if he will just retire like Tim Duncan, because he's uncomfortable. He said he's uncomfortable with praise, and a lot of people don't know that about him. Sure. Sure. But shouts to LeBron, man, because he definitely obviously is a real one, and one of the best to ever do it. But
you know,
we
listen,
will see that farewell tour for sure.
LeBron puts an emoji, right, of a hourglass, right? So should we put an emoji of a?
Come on, man.
I'm just like, or
Yeah, bro. That's really what it is. It's what are we talking about? The need for a kind of needless drama is, I think, is always been a little bit of interesting conversation. I think all around his surrounded around his overall greatness, but he is great. He's absolutely great. But again, I think that's just kind of a funny tidbit, one way or the other.
yeah, listen, we will forever be decoding LeBron messages, even when he walks away from the game of basketball.
Yeah.
Does it surprise you though that the NBA didn't really celebrate like LeBron James in that he I know that they have the nice announcer and everything like that, and he was the last person introduced for the Western Conference
Yeah,
All.
I mean, I saw more than one or two different montages to him kind of throughout. Again, just a lot of stuff pregame, and things like that. Kind of. So to me, I think it was enough for where it's at. Passing Kareem, great. They acknowledged it, but come that farewell tour, and whatever his last All-Star game is, 2-3 years from now, wherever that ultimately is, there will be a celebration like no other. So do not worry about that.
But I
That
I think for the purposes, like, look, I don't think Kareem was there in attendance, and I know that he's been battling some health issues, through the course of this regular season. So fortunately he was there to see LeBron break the all-time scoring record and things of that nature. But I do think that these are the like we said, Shaw, like these are the kind of things that help remind us why we have these events when we do and how these things happen, because they'll listen, the list of what LeBron has achieved is a long list, and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't in our own way, as the culture, try to acknowledge it, because again, to your point, it is not easy, getting to this point, like these accomplishments. And listen, if there's one thing that you want to one up LeBron James over Michael Jordan, this would be it, right? Like at this particular point, when Michael Jordan is coming out on that basketball court at the age of 39, we're not seeing the Michael Jordan that we lauded and applauded for a good stretch, I'm saying, of the 90s, you know what I mean? And in the late 80s. There was, remnants of it. You saw spotty moments of it, but you weren't getting it, on a consistent basis. And I think, this is the reason why, to your point, it was important that we highlight this, because again, this is one of those those unspoken achievements that probably will never be accomplished for quite some time. It's going to be a long time before we see somebody actually, get somewhere close in proximity of doing it. You know what I mean? And that's saying something.
Yeah, like I said, and I'll just close with this: it's duality of it. It's not just the 20-time All-Star; it's being able to play at that level and even play 20 years.
Well, he's setting the standard at his position, right?
Yeah,
Like
and at his age.
at
Yeah,
his
really,
at his age, and again, like we can sit here and we can argue semantics about what the criteria is, but you think about all of the guys that play his position right now in the Western Conference. Name me outside of Kevin Durant. I mean, he's still a better, player right now, even better player than Karl Anthony Towns, who, we've always said he really should be playing the 5 rather than playing the 4. But since he plays the 4, you can make the argument, well, his numbers should be something equivalent to what LeBron James is doing. He doesn't meet those numbers. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't,
not
and he
even
doesn't with the same consistency, which again, he sets that bar, ultimately. And so, that's saying a lot. Like if again, he could take a year off, come back, and he would probably still wind up being an all-star, because you're not going to see too many people playing that position like he plays that position, which makes him a viable commodity in the current state of what we consider an all-star.
Yep. So our hats off and salute to LeBron James. It's going to be hard pressed, if if pressed at all, to be able to match what he's been able to do for the longevity and at the level that he's been able to do it. So we definitely wanted to give him his proverbial flowers, on our show here too, and put a wrap on what was an interesting All-Star weekend. And we'll see the Baseline Boyz make their appearance out there in San Francisco. Maybe we can get the vibes going again. We'll see what's going on.
All right, man. So once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for hopping on board with us this week. Thanks for burning the midnight oil with us. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren, Shaw, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for hopping on board this week. Catch up with you next time.